Hello, hello. How's it going? Happy Tuesday. Yo, yo, yo. Hello, friends. Move my microphone here without jostling it too much. How's it going, Nix? How's it going, Rhiannon? Nix, your Windows PC got desynced by 2 minutes, which is interesting. Apparently, Windows 11 doesn't auto-sync your time with the internet on startup. Also, Discord uses its own NTP, not your machine's. Huh. I think there's a setting. Oh, let's just totally expose my personal email address to the internet. Super cool. Oh, well. That email address is so old. It is on so many dark web sites. Set time zone automatically. Set time automatically on. I think you gotta enable this setting. But yeah, it's weird if that setting's not on by default. Last sync 6:34:21. Oh yeah, wait, I just rebooted my computer like 20 minutes ago, and it says my last sync was at 6:30 in the morning. So yeah, it doesn't sync every time you reboot. That's weird. Hard to believe that you'd get out of sync by 12 minutes. Delete the stream and restart. It's already on YouTube, Nix. It's fine. It's fine. Again, if someone wanted to find that email, it's all over the dark web, including my passwords from 2013. Rhiannon, every time you boot into Windows, the time is set to UTC, even though you have it set to your time zone and it's set to sync, but it rarely does. That's weird. All right. Let's get going, I guess. I don't really know what I'm going to work on today. We have some options. But let's get it all set up and we'll see. We'll see what ends up grabbing our attention. That's kind of just how we do it. On our list, we're kind of working on resizable block buffers. I'm tempted to do this, but there's some consequences to doing this. But I feel like this is some fundamental stuff we got to do, because it's not just that we need to make them resizable, we also have to make them movable. But to make them movable, we also have to coordinate with the tile map layer. We either have to move the tile map layer in Godot, or we have to introduce an offset. Neither of which is like incredible. Actually, no, maybe that's not true. Yeah, I don't know. Resizable can achieve movable, I guess. And we also got to raycast the cursor input. I also want to work on this some more. We're ignoring 90-degree camera rotations because I still haven't put any time into that. I'm enjoying the music today. Attention-driven development. That is it. Add. That is what powers us. It's going pretty good for you. Awesome. For me, I injured myself this morning, which is why I had that weird Discord notification where I was like, I'm old and I injure easily. This morning when I was making my cup of coffee, which is nearly dead, which is sad. I like took I have like a single cup pour over like thing, you know. So you just have like a single filter and, you know, the grinds in it. And so I took yesterday's and I opened my compost bin, and all I do is I pick it up and overturn it into the compost bin. And I pull a muscle in like my ribs. I pull a muscle by dumping out 1 cup of coffee's worth of compost. And it hurts pretty badly. And I have very limited range of motion right now. Which is so funny because my doctor referred me to a physical therapist earlier this year and I haven't had time to go. And I was like, do I even need to do that? I feel pretty good now. And then I do this and I'm like, oh yeah, I should go. I should get some exercises for like core strength and stuff. Getting old and being less active sucks. I know, it's the being less active part that's really getting me. I know people much older than me that are in much better shape. Yeah, you just pull your neck muscles every other month just by sleeping wrong or something. Yeah, that's how it is. But it blew me away, which is crazy because I carried home like 50 pounds of groceries yesterday, and I carried it far, and I was fine. And then I do this morning, and maybe that's it. Maybe that was the straw that broke the camel's hat, as they say. Oh well. So yeah, the invalid block auto tiling, we can also work on this. I want to talk about this a little bit because I've been looking at we worked on this a little bit Friday, where I'm thinking about how to do the texture atlas format a little better. Because here's like our current texture atlas. Here's the one for the invalid block. And you'll notice this is insane. If you can see it, I'm going to turn one of the other ones on so it's a little easier to see. It basically combines, it basically goes through every iteration of each outline, sometimes twice, for reasons that are obscure. So like this is like X-wise, it's like, here's like the right outline gone, the left outline gone, both outlines gone, lower right, both right, lower right, lower left, lower both. It's got like all the permutations, and it's like truly insane. So I've been thinking about a better way to do this that also is like a reasonable way for me to make art. Oh, nice. You did some home repair sewing, Nix. That's cool. I wish I had skills like that. There's a tiny little tailor nearby that's like really sweet. And like if I bring them something that needs repair, they'll do it for like $10. I'll like bring them a duffel bag and I'll be like, I ripped the zipper thing or whatever. I'll tell them something and they'll be like, yeah, sure, we'll fix it. They're like busy working on wedding dresses or something. I'm like, oh, that's so nice. So I haven't had to have that skill, but I still like I still would like some more of these basic skills. So what kind of got me thinking about this was the invalid block in general. Because I wanna support the invalid block on like an auto tiling level, on like a per face level. Because right now what it is, the way it's set up is it's really just a substitute for the door. You don't sew, but you knit and crochet a bit, Rhiannon. Cool. Yeah, so if we run this, and we make some stuff or whatever, just make one complete floor here for testing. So if we make our room or whatever, so this invalid block only kicks in for the doors. So like 1 door, 2 door, 3 door, no door. But you can see the outline in between them is maintained, and it's because it's not actually auto tiling anything. It's just treating them as individually placed doors. So I would like it to work like our regular auto tiler, but that means setting it up to work that way. But it's kind of unique because it's the first thing that we have that's actually textured and not just flat shaded. Everything else we've been doing is just totally flat shaded, so I've been able to take a lot of shortcuts. But with this, it's actually got its X face is not just or its Y face is not just a mirror image of its X face, which is interesting. So we can't just make an alternative tile of the X face and call it good. Like we can't just do a flip H version of this. So we actually have to build a separate tile set atlas or separate tile atlas that's actually got the full thing on it. But I don't want to do this because this is insane. Having this full, let me just hide the grid for a second. Because we'd need to have double this because we need to have this for the other side. So we're not doing this because this is truly chaotic. So I have some alternatives in mind. Let me walk you through them a little bit. Let me find my file here. Yeah, this is it. Oh, but also this and this, and I also probably need this for illustration. So here's our invalid block altogether, right? Also, you can view it here. $410. Oh, the mod count this week is 410, Nix. You had to go down. You found some mods that were hammering your ticks per second. Yeah, well, you can't win them all. You know. 412 steps forward, 2 steps back, you know? That's all right. So here it is. Here's like our invalid block broken up into its like 2 sections, right? The lower half is this is just the lower half block for like when it's cut in half. So here is just the outline. And here is just the texturing. Now, what's interesting is these outlines might change, obviously. You might only see this section of outline, or you might only see this section of outline. Like, you might not use the whole whole outline, depending on what state the autotiler is in, right? So it's super crazy to just do something like this. We can turn this back on. This is super unhinged. It's simple, but it's like, I don't want to do this for everything. I would like to define the object and then be able to like have the autotiler figure it out. Like I would like to be able to just have this once and then have all of the outlining handled separately. The obvious way to do that is to just have the outlines be a separate tile layer so that the outlines get drawn over this. And that's actually a pretty reasonable idea because a lot of, you know, that could potentially replace things like the selection layer. Like we already have a layer that's just for selection outlines. We could just have a single outline layer because the selection outlines could override the other. However, the selection outline might not fully map over the other. Like we can look at an example of that. I feel like having a visual example of what I'm talking about will help here. Make that 411. Oh, you just added a RimWorld mod, Nix. You found a mod that will you explore the map by walking to the edge of the map and it loads in the next tile. Oh, that's cool. That's cool. I feel like that is going to hammer your ticks per second. You're all of a sudden going to be simulating twice the map size. All right, so when we do this, we can like, let's just make a floor again. So that seems sufficient for our experiment. All right, so we've got this. You see it's auto-tiling. You see it's like hiding outlines. You see it's doing all the good stuff. The problem is, if I do this selection thing, right now it's like replacing all the outlines, but there's more complicated cases where that won't happen. Like, so we can't just do that because that won't always work. So we can make our little rooms and we like demarcate them. That. Okay, so we've got something complicated here. Well, let's try to select within that space. I really hope this is I really hope this works as an example. Somewhere in here, there's going to be an example of an outline that's not fully... Oh, yeah, you can see it right here. You can see it. So if you see where the light gray band meets the dark gray band above it, you can see outlines going across that aren't being... You can actually see it on both sides. You can see this white outline. So on the second floor above my cursor, you can see black outlines and white outlines coexisting. So we can't just overwrite that, right? Well, you can also see it here if I do this. You can see this thing not being outlined fully. So, okay, we can't just have one outline layer, sure. There's other things we could do. Yo, thank you, Pheasant SC2. So, all right, what do I want to do? I feel like I'm describing this about as much as I'm like thinking of it for myself. So I don't want to do this. This is crazy. I'm thinking about when we're creating art. When we're creating like new art, like this sort of thing. So I've got like a new tile here, which I have to redo this. I just realized. I didn't just realize, but I realized last night. You've got a weird shape like this, right? And you've got it actually has a different view from different angles. And you want to be able to make an atlas that makes sense for this, right? There's a number of ways we could do this. We could define an underlying texture and just use it once. And then like cut it off or whatever for depending on what the outline is and what like we're going to do this. We're probably going to do this kind of normal mapping. That might work. That might not work. Depends on how you define the texture. Probably won't work for anything detailed. It works for our flat shading, but I'm hesitant to do the wrong thing just because our textures currently don't have any texture to them. They're just flat shaded. So I'm thinking about what to do. I'm thinking about this kind of normal mapping thing. One idea I had was like, okay, let's use like a shader. Let's use like a per tile shader and let's send the shader, or let's send additional information to the shader. Instead of just sending the tile map data, let's send like some additional info. Maybe we send some bit flags about like what outline state this tile is in, or this block, whatever. So that could be cool. How would we encode that? I'm like, okay, we can encode that in like color channels. So we get something. Oh, I lost a layer here. Whatever, this is good enough. So this was supposed to be something else, but you couldn't actually see what I had over here before. I had these are color channels that represent bit flag states. I had another one where the bit flags were encoded directly into the image. So like this would be 1, this would be 2, this would be 4, and so this one would be like the combination of those. But you couldn't actually see that because it's really hard to see 1, 0, 0 as distinct from black, distinct from 0, 0, 0. So I had like this intermediate step where I was like, oh, is this a PNG? That's why I can't see this. Hold on. I have an ACE version of this. There it is. Better. Okay, so here's like a channel equivalent. Here it is as bit flags. Can you even see this? Right? It's so hard to see. This is unworkable. Like, look at this. That almost doesn't register on the screen. You can see like maybe a little bit of this blue here. So I tried this with bit flags. This would work, but it would be horrible to have to make. So I tried it with having like stand-in channels that represent combinations of bit flags. So you could be like, Okay, so this shade of magenta represents like a combination of like a number of different flags. Like it's this flag and this flag and this flag and this flag, and it's like the combination of those things. And it's like, it's okay. Because then we could have a system that takes this information and then makes the like actual encoded bit flag thing that's like impossible to see with your own eyes. That's also kind of sucks from a workflow standpoint, because what we're essentially trying to do is we're essentially trying to encode and represent the different segments of an outline. So like this is the lower right segment. This is the upper right segment. The lower right segment and the upper right segment actually overlap at the middle pixel, which is not great, but it's what happens. Same thing at the corners. And we need to capture the corners because of this phenomenon that I'm calling dots versus no dots. Nix, how would you apply this onto a sloped object? How would it be able to calculate out the gradient between the edges and the middle of the cube? I mean, the cube... How would it be able to calculate the gradient between the edges and the middle of a cube? I don't totally understand the question, but it's not that bad. It's basically, we're going back to this normal mapping style thing. So you can just tell it where the middle is. So like, if you look at this object, orange represents the X face and green represents the Y face. So the X tile would only draw this part of it, and the Y tile would only draw this part of it. So it would be like a sampling thing. We'd sample the UVs and check to see what the... So it would be like, the Y tile would be like, okay, is there green here? Actually, the way we could do this, we could probably have a tile per block. Yeah, no worries. So this idea would technically work. What was I talking about? Corners? Oh yeah, because we're still trying to solve the dots versus no dots problem. And the no dots problem is that this outline only goes to here and cannot go farther because this pixel belongs to this upper section here. And so this tile needs to have a single corner pixel. It's less pronounced here, though it still looks a little weird because this line gets extended across by 5 instead of 4. So this is not sufficient. This is like the enumerated version of like, here are all the outline combinations, right? For no dots. If we add dots, we solve that problem. Like if we add corner dots, that solves the problem. Because then this upper left piece will give us the one corner pixel we need to complete this outline. It looks a little awkward in this case, but it's still technically more true than, you know, it's more consistent than this, even though it looks a little weird. So we kind of need the dot system, and you can kind of see it when I do something like this. Like here, we don't want any dots because there's actually no outline here. You see this midline, but this midline just represents the overlap between this and this, which is why it has a certain color. So this is pink to like represent the merger between orange and blue. And this is like cyan for the merger between green and purple. So yeah, you can see the corner piece here and here. So it has application. So we need these dots. So that's great. So that means we need versions of this with and without dots. Horrible. So that makes the tile. So if we take this approach, that's even more tiles than what we've already got. Which isn't a huge problem if it's generated automatically. So someone had an idea. I was in a co-working session last night, and someone had a nice idea as an alternative to this, the bit flags, bit channels thing, color channel thing. They were like, well, you could use layers. to represent each segment. And I was like, layers. Okay, we could use layers. So layers would be weird. So here's like a layer that represents all outlines. I don't know if I'd actually need this one, but I just did this as an example. So instead of this, you could do like, here's the lower segment. Here's the upper segment. Here's the other lower segment. Here's the other upper segment. Here's the Z segment. Here's like the other Z segment. So like we could have these be layers and they could be generated out into a sprite sheet. This is easier to do in terms of it's easier to understand. It's easier to see. I don't love it for a number of reasons, mostly because it still doesn't solve some of the problems. Like I'd have to then generate, it just introduces complexity because I would have to generate JSON files for each sprite sheet. And then I'd need to read the JSON files in just to be able to understand how this is processed. And then I'd still need to make my own, or I need to map the sprite sheet for all these. But this could work. This could work. This could be like an okay workflow. So we could do something like this. This is ultimately what we really need to handle is we've got like the combined 3D object, we've got its outlines, and we've got its underlying texture. Hey Silas, how's it going? Happy Tuesday. Let me have a little more of my coffee before it experiences heat death here. So this is kind of, you're good, you're working on the terminal stuff. Nice. Nice. You got power networks and everything going yet? I'm just kidding. It's been fun talking about it. I've been meaning to respond to that thread because I think there's some interesting stuff there. So yeah, all we really need to do is split this into its two parts and then understand the overlays. So what I'm tempted to do is I'm still tempted to kind of do this by hand because I feel like laying it out visually in a single flat thing is better. So what I could at least do is we could have the underlying texture once, right? We could have it once, or we could break it up into its contiguous parts to make it easier. Which isn't bad. It would take up more space, but it would also allow us to include a floor piece. So we could define a block entirely. So that would mean something like, that would mean taking this and like making another version of this that's like the floor piece. Which would be like shorter by some amount. How tall is a floor piece? I think it's 9. It actually doesn't need to be 9, it could be 8 because the top piece is really not determining of anything. So it's 8 and then the top. Okay. So 8 is here. So we bring it down to there. So this will be a floor piece that we'll make. I know this is like very hard to tell what's going on here. So this is the half wall, which you really don't need to draw per se if we're doing this shader thing. The thing is, okay, let me back up. Why don't I just want to have a shader that like looks at something like this and figures out, okay, we're doing, these bit flags are set like this and they're doing this and they're whatever. It's like we're already sending the full tile map data over whenever it changes. So we're already sending the complete tile map data over. So there would be like a fundamental change to that. We wouldn't really be sending tile map data over anymore. We'd be sending something else. We'd be sending inputs to the tile maps shader. And I don't love that because that's a lot more, that feels like a lot more stuff going back and forth with the GPU. Again, it's probably not a real concern, as Diginanigans might like to tell us. It's still like negligible performance for the kind of game that we're making. Silas, you've got your power line network, but right now you're trying to make a simple terminal multiplexer to work. Ooh, multiplexer. Do I even know what that word means? Probably not. Let me look it up and see. Let me look it up and see if I understand what that means. It's a device that selects between a number of input signals. Oh, okay. Cool. I like that you're like, it's like you're simulating the actual terminal process. I would fake so much of this stuff if I made a terminal. It would not actually work as a terminal. It would be like all totally faked. Like, it's a way of managing multiple terminals. Cool. I like your dedication to the hard sci-fi. It's kind of working like a terminal. It looks really good. It looks really good. Oh, aside. I've got an aside. I've been watching old sci-fi movies because I got an Xbox Series X for my partner, who pretty much only plays games on the couch. That's the only time they play games. And I had a Series S, but I was like, I want a Blu-ray player and I want some upgrades so that, you know, she can play better games. Or the same games at higher fidelity. And so I've been watching old movies because I have this big old Blu-ray collection that I literally haven't used since I owned a PS3, which is my last console that had a disc drive. So I've been watching old movies. I watched 2001, which I had, and that was great. Got some inspiration from there. I actually saw a computer terminal in 2001 that looks exactly like one of these terminals, but just a little different. And I was like, oh, I'm going to make that adjustment. Make a little adjustment here. But old sci-fi has been so good. 60s, 70s sci-fi. There's two different kinds of Xboxes, Nix. There's the Series S or even the X Digital that don't have disk drives anymore. So I did not have a disk drive version of the Xbox. Silas, you're creating a way of making scripts in-game which you can control the station with. It's a subset of Bash. That is awesome. That is great. In-game Bash scripts. I love that. Anyway, my what I was saying was like late 60s, early sci-fi or early 70s sci-fi for us is so good. It's such a gold mine of inputs, of inspiration for our very low res art style because it has so little fidelity that we have. Like, we have such a small resolution to work with that we really need the big blocky colors of, like, obviously Star Trek the original series or 2001 A Space Odyssey, or what I watched Sunday night, which was great that I hadn't seen it in who knows how long. Logan's Run was great for this. Logan's Run has a very blocky, very silly art style. Very good. So I'm gonna keep going through. Yeah, I enjoyed that one a lot. So I'm gonna keep doing that. That's what I've been doing on the weekend, is I've been setting myself up an old movie, setting up my laptop at the couch with my Intuos drawing tablet, and I've been just like hanging out, drawing, watching old sci-fi. It's been great. I don't have any new art to show, but hopefully I will soon. Hopefully we'll get some new art. It's kind of silly, Nix, that I didn't have a Blu-ray player for so long, but you know, now a decade later, I've still got all the Blu-rays and they still look great. 4K upresing works pretty well. So anyway, tangent. Tangent concluded there. Okay, where was I? Rhiannon, do you log the movies you watch anywhere, or do you have recs of what you've been watching lately? Well, that was one. But watch Logan's Run. I think they're remaking it right now. With, like, one of the Ryans. I don't remember which one. Maybe Gosling? No Michael York. You got pulled into a work thing? Oh, no worries. What are you working on? Oh, we're thinking about ways to not do this horrible tile set atlas thing, or ways of making it better. And I've been talking about the different experiments I've been doing. One was to do like, the main one was to do, here they are, to do like set like bit flags, encode bit flags into an image to give you an indication of where the outlines are and what face they correspond to, which, while it would technically work, would be miserable to work in. Because you'd still need intermediate steps of actually like this isn't even the bit flag. The bit flags would be this, which is impossible to see. This was like a mapping where I mapped certain colors onto certain bit flag combinations. Oh, I got someone I can ban. Join me in photon torpedoing. Deposed contrast BHA4E. Bye. Got him.
He's dead, Jim. He's dead, Jim.
You got beaten to it. Quick trigger, smooth in a second. All right, so I don't really want to do that. So I'm thinking of at least separating the outline layer from the underlying texture layer. And then we have some flexibility. So this is an interesting case in that this texture doesn't really change when it rotates or anything. So it's just one, but we got to consider, you know, what happens. I've organized this so badly. When we have something like this, that's got like different directions. So we'd need a format that can like accommodate like, okay, this is a 4-directional block. It has different textures and different outlines depending on which way you're looking at the block. And we would need to be able to include that in the format. There are some blocks that don't have edges at all, like our hover mask. So we need to include that in a format. We basically need format configuration information that we can pass into our tile, into our auto tiler, so that we can continue, because I want to continue just having a single pass for the auto tiler, or like a single process. We could maybe split this as like line then fill. So we have a set process for how lines are created, like outlines, and then we could have a fill pass. We'd probably do the fill pass first. We'd probably fill and then line, like, and that could be inline or outline. It could be either. It would just be put the lines down. So we might do that, which would mean just splitting this out into 2 different steps. But that would be cool, and that would add that would make it easier to make the art. So I could just draw the outlines once, and then draw the fills once, and then if we've got the multi-camera angle thing, then I would just have 4 in a row of like each view. And then the only real question is, do I split these up? Or do we do the thing like I was talking about where we use a shader? Because we still want this kind of mapping kind of thing, probably. We don't need it, but it would be probably kind of nice to be able to do that. And then that's that other trade-off I was talking about. It's like, do we really want to send like textures of like values over to the... I don't want to just be loading that much stuff up into the GPU all the time of like, here's the current, you know, tile state of all of these different tiles. We're already doing that with the tile map data, and our tile map data process is pretty slick. Because that's the tile map data is just pinned. Like, I don't know. I'm thinking about these things. Obviously, I'm not being particularly coherent about it. Rhiannon, can you read the ASprite file format directly and have everything on different layers? Like you could have a block layer, then an outline layer laid on top. Yes, we could. We could. So we were talking about that in the context of this. So when we were, this is a bad example. So we're separating like the different segments of outline here. So here's like, so this shade of red and green, this is like an outline segment, and this is an outline segment. And then this is a segment where they both overlap. And like that's a thing. So we could do something like that. And we thought about that was an idea someone else gave me. They were like, why don't you just do it as different layers and then use the JSON file that you can generate from the ASprite file to like tell it some different data, which is cool because we could also use slices to embed JSON or to embed data in the JSON file. So here's like the complete outline, and then we could have like the segments of it delineated. I don't love this because I feel like this is too granular and too finicky, and like I'd end up having like so many layers. But what you're suggesting is not bad, where we just put these on different layers so you can still work on it as if it's like one piece, and then when it gets outputted to a sprite sheet, it gets all chopped up. Chip, 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 chip. That's a good idea. I think we'll probably end up doing something like that. It does make ASprite an open source or cheap tile editor for your modders. I mean, that's the intention. That's definitely the intention. And I think leaning into that ability to embed data in that is good. And yeah, I don't love working on these big sheets. I like being able to see it all, but I think it would be nicer to do otherwise. So yeah, maybe we set something like that up. We have to decide the layer ordering, and we have to decide whether there's like because part of the nice thing about doing it this way as one big separate file is I can slice sections of it. So I could do something, I forgot where there's a button to do a slice. And I haven't used it in forever, so I forgot where it was. Do I have to make a selection first and then I can slice it? There was a slice tool. I just forgot where it was. But yeah, we could also, because a slice lets you take an area and define a 2D area and provide data points about it. So I could provide, so from here to here, this is where like the directional stuff is. Or from here to here, this is whatever. Because what I don't want to do is I don't want the format to be implicit. I don't really want that. I want the format to be more explicitly laid out. And part of that would probably mean it needs to be read in and understood. So like we can include some of that data. All right, I'm just gonna look this up. How to make a slice in ASprite. I messed around with this and then I totally forgot. It's within the move tool options. Okay. Yes, here it is. Slice tool. So I can make this slice. Slice 1. I could name it something. We'll just call it slice 1. It has properties, so I can give it a color. We can include some of that color. This is where we could put, if we wanted to encode some bit flags, we could totally do it here. And the readability of it wouldn't matter. So that's neat. Then you wouldn't need to do per pixel stuff. You can specify bounds. You can specify the width and height of tiles within that. So here's like, it's at 0.96. It's 32 by 32. We can include some other information like 9 slice information or pivot. We can also include user data, which is just written as a field. So if we needed to put something other than a name, if we need to put some kind of payload, we could put that in there too. So neat. So lots of ways of packing meaning into the sprite. So that's a neat way to do it. I still just need to spend more time looking at this and trying stuff out. So I think we're going to head in that direction. I don't know if I'm ready to just dive into that right now, which means I'll probably be staring at it later. So I kind of want to work on something else right now. But what would that be? Would be my question. So we could work on the raycast thing, which I think would be neat. Because I was thinking about that too. I was thinking about, we have a very simple case the way the block placement works right now, where like you just pick a size of the block. You're like, I want to place a floor, I want to place a wall, I want to place both, or I want to place a door, or I want to like copy some combination of that stuff to the clipboard and like move it around. Those are like the 5 things you're allowed to do right now. But there's probably going to need to be different steps. Rhiannon, it looks like Asprite also supports plugins, so you or an intrepid programmer could create a plugin to handle the extra metadata you need. That's true. That could be cool. I feel like I would use that as a last resort, though. So like, so here's some interesting stuff, right? So like, so here we define like, these are the blocks. We place the blocks. The flood fill has made decisions. It's figured out, so the inner light gray, this is like the interior, right? The juicy, soft interior of the ship, and it's being colored that way. The middle gray is like the outside of the ship, and it's being colored that way. And then the system can tell where the interior, by interior, I mean like what I call the middle hull, which are the sections that have no daylight. They see no daylight. They're smooshed up against something else. So we're talking about floor plates beneath walls, walls against walls, stuff like that. This stuff's all being colored automatically. But I can imagine what I want to do after this point, once I've like established these are where the blocks are. You could imagine I'd want to say something like, this is a bad example because the door is its own kind of block, but you can imagine I want to like apply a specific piece here. You're like, ooh, I want to put like a thing here. I want to put like something that looks like, I don't know, a fire extinguisher. Maybe it's interactive, maybe it's not. If it's interactive, it's probably a block and it's something else. But like, you could imagine wanting to like paint the wallpaper by hand. Or it's like, let's say I've got some different versions of the cutaway, the interior cutaway dark gray stuff. Like maybe I have like a funny one that's like a gag one, which is like there's a crew member's skeleton like stuck in the wall or something like that. And I'm like, I want to apply that there. Like we could have it be randomized. So that it like has a random chance of being there. But I'm realizing that we'll probably want to add the ability to like paint individual faces. Which for one thing will work great with our raycast, our raycast input system, because then the system will actually be able to tell not just which block you're touching, but which face in that block you're touching. And then we can do recolor and stuff like that. So in my mind, that really puts that puts me in a direction where I'm like, I really do want to try to do this with just tile data. And by what I mean by just tile data is I do want to, even if there's a tool that helps us set up the tile set. Where's my whole tile set? I do want to rely on this tile set stuff. We can't use the alternative tiles. We have to stop using these because this was a shortcut that we took that will no longer work. So I need to think about some of that stuff too. I'm sorry we're not like being very productive today. It's like the beginning of a week and I've been thinking about a lot of stuff over the weekend. So today is very much like what directions are we going to go into this week? What is the kind of things we want to work on and figure out? So I'm feeling very scatterbrained and kind of all over the place. And then I think we'll focus in over the next few days and, you know, figure out what we actually want to work on. So it's a lot of discussion right now. So the way I have this set up now is there's a source ID. So basically any given read or any given interpretation of an atlas needs to have its own source ID. So you'll notice I have this outer floor top and an outer wall top, and they read out the same. Ignore this. This is an awkward side effect here. Although actually, I should probably have the half blocks and the full blocks be on different source IDs. It's probably the way I would want to do it. And so I think what's going to happen is these tile sets are going to be, they're going to need to be generated dynamically to an extent, because you can only have one tile set per tile map layer. So we've got our tile map layers. We've got like all our hull levels. We've got 8 hull levels. Each hull level has right now 7 tile map layers. So it has a layer for the floors, a layer for the floor X, floor Y, floor Z, bulk X, bulk Y, bulk Z. So these need to have individual. What's funny is we could have a different tile set for each. So what we could do at build time, we could have a tile set that gets generated. Like maybe when you're loading in all your content, like all your mods and stuff, and you're figuring out, okay, what content am I using? Maybe we have a thing where we build like a tile set that has all of the floors in it. Like here are all the floor pieces in it. If we want, we could simplify that later and build out a tile set res that's for a specific ship. So like once you're done building the ship, it will be like, okay, what source IDs are you actually using from this collection of all of them? What source IDs? Actually, you might need to not even load all of them. What you could do is you could still have the UI elements. So we have our UI elements here. Crash. I don't know why it's crashed from inside Godot here. What if we build this thing first and then rerun it? Crash. What if we run it from in here? No crash? Weird. Okay. So we have these palette things on the side here. And so maybe what you do is you do something like you pick the wall, and then right now there's just one wall because there's only one kind of wall right now. And it picks the color based on the status of, you know, where that wall is. But maybe we have a thing where you lay out all your blocks, and then you can go in and you can paint individual faces. And maybe that's where it's like, okay, where do you want Like, which resources do you want to use? And it could be like, oh, I want to use rusted metal. I want to use the rusted metal textures for the walls here. And it like, okay. And it's like, okay. And it just like updates the tile set to include those. In which case, we need information about the regions. We need information about all the regions of that tile atlas so that the tile set can build it. And I think now we're back to, you know, talking about slicing these up. Because I could do something like where I could introduce a slice here. This is a terrible example because we're not going to use this layout. But let's say this was, you know, all the walls. I could do this. I could make a slice of this. And I could include information about what's in that slice. I could even make smaller slices. So I could be like, here's all the walls. And then I could make another slice inside that. And I could be like, here are all the walls for this state that like have all their outlines for top and bottom or something like that. Like we could embed all of this information that the tile editor could use to build out the tile set with the tile atlases you're actually using. Which is a little overcomplicated, but I really want to make sure I have a workflow that is moddable. Not such the workflow is moddable, but you know what I mean, like so that the game is moddable. So I don't want to make assumptions about stuff here, like because right now in the tile system we make a tons of different assumptions. Like if we go down here and we go down here, you look in here, it's like the tile atlases right now have hard-coded source IDs, which for now is fine, but you could easily substitute this out with like some kind of lookup where you have a dictionary where like the tile atlas.block could have whatever, you know. You could introduce some kind of lookup step where it's like, okay, and then it's like, all right, we need to set up the tile atlas with this, and it like opens up the JSON file associated with that atlas, and it's like, okay, here's the region where this is, here's how that should be set up. So that would be a way of encoding tile set configuration data in the tile atlas itself, and that would support us being able to build the tile sets dynamically, which would be cool. Hey, Diginanigans. How's it going? Happy Tuesday. I don't understand why this doesn't run in Godot. What if I just close this file and reopen it? There we go. Yeah, Godot gets confused when I make changes to the C# build. And there are references to C# objects or classes in the GDScript file. It seems to cause weird issues. Sorry, I know I'm talking at like a million miles a second here. I'm like trying to iron out what I want to do. But I saw your post to Shenanigans of that shader-based thing. Way of getting from 3D art to pixel art. It looked really cool. Yeah, having a viewport that has like a transparent cutout of like what's behind the node is like super useful. I think that's what you were talking about. Yeah, you find a lot of weird issues when you modify anything outside of Godot. Okay, that seems consistent. But yeah, I did that with a game. With my Following Wind game, where like, let me just open that up and I can show. Following Wind Remastered. So like these spells here in the upper right, which for some reason you can't click very quickly. So like these spells up here, which I still can't click. When are you going to let me click them? There we go. These individual spells are like their own scene with like little sub viewports, and they're transparent, so like I can see the stuff behind them. And I love that. I love that. I love the ability to do that because then I can run these as separate scenes and then output the result here. And so they're running in isolation, and I can use them as like little UI elements. Because I tried different ways of like faking it, and it did not work. It did not work well. Wow, 2 ships passing in the night there. Oh, there's my little sea monster. But yeah, I love using viewports that way. It was eerie how similar they implemented everything to how you did, including encountering the same issues. That seems like a great resource then. I need to watch the video. I haven't watched it, or I would speak in more depth about it. You're already using the sub viewports with transparent backgrounds. The issue was the camera in the scene was grabbing other meshes. Oh. You didn't realize you can set it so that the camera only picks up children of that sub viewport. Oh, that is slick. I don't know if that was an issue. I might have just like moved my scenes far enough away that didn't happen to me. But that's cool. Super slick. Anyway, we're thinking about our art workflow here. It's 80 degrees next. That doesn't sound great. 82.4 Fahrenheit. Thank you. Thank you for converting that for me so that I can understand. Yeah. So I'm thinking at a minimum, we split out the outline. Close this. So we can split the outline out, iterate through the outline. I think that's better. We're considering some crazy stuff to shenanigans. We were considering encoding like bit flag information into like a image like this so we could figure out where the outlines were for different segments. And this is so useless. It's not useless, but it's like impossible to visualize because this isn't even the bit flags. These are the bit flags. This is just like a color channel representation of the bit flags that's easier to see. Which is a stupid way of doing it. And so we were thinking about generating like intermediate steps where we could like take this information and then like a system could like generate out, or we could just use a shader and it would do UV sampling to be like, okay, we want this outline. So go grab the underlying sample texture or the underlying outline texture and just sample these or whatever, this one, based on which state. But it would have involved communicating a lot more state with the shader. And I don't really want to do that since we're already sending all the tile map data over. I didn't want to be constantly loading these like shader inputs of like what we actually want to render for like... Anyway, I thought it would be better to just take a different approach. So we're thinking about doing something where we're laying out our tile atlases and using slices to provide information about the content, and then exporting a JSON file of like the configuration of the atlas, and then eventually building the tile set dynamically based on which atlases were needed. Obviously, we need a default set, but I thought that would be pretty slick. So what I should do to start is I know I said we might work on something else because I feel like I need more time to cook on this. I'm not quite sure what to do about things like the half blocks, but I think I need to draw the whole half block again. We do need to split out the individual faces. Let's make this a lot bigger. I feel like including the final combined 3D thing is helpful from like a understandability thing. Because right now we're taking shortcuts. Like we're using alternative tiles for the Y facing tiles because we didn't need to separately draw them. God, I hate that. But we don't need to do that. So yeah, we draw something like this. We have like the outlines. The other idea was to do this on separate layers. But the problem with doing it on separate layers is it's harder to use slices to provide information. So I'm kind of tempted to just do it on one big layer. Diginatings, if you're trying to automate the shading, you don't think I need to go as complex as bitmaps. Just use grayscale to represent shadows, or if you want to go fancier, simple normal maps. No, I meant using shaders to like engage or disengage parts of the outline. So it'd be like we might need this section of outline, or we might need this section of outline, or we might need just this single pixel of outline. And so I wanted to provide a way of telling it. Oh, I closed the file. I wanted to provide a way of telling it where those were and what segments they consisted of, or what segments they belong to. So like this blue shade is like the negative Y outline of the Z face. And so it would just sample. It would use UV sampling to just, it would know which pixels to do, and then it could reference, you know, the outline for this block is purple, so it would need to sample the outline texture at this point. Yeah, we haven't even gotten to lighting, but I feel like lighting is going to be solved probably more like that, where we provide like normal maps and we do some shader stuff based on the light source. That we'll probably use shaders for. And I'm okay with that because we're not providing new information to the GPU all the time. I mean, I guess we are, but it would be lighting information, which we could provide more globally. I don't know. I don't want to think about lighting. Let's not think about lighting right now. Nix, the mod count is 413. What do you mean down to 413? Wasn't it 410 a minute ago? Did it go up and then down again? Hey, Adagon with the hydrate. Thank you. How's it going, Adagon? I am down to jam. I'm waiting. I'm counting the days. It's really not far, is it? Less than a month away. You may have added a new feature to the site. You're not sure. I like this. This is fun. The way the way I can play with the logo. It's like billboarding to the mouse. That's fun. Oh, who's that? I don't know him. Wouldn't watch him. Music player. Click the music button in the nav bar. There's a music player. Is it this one? Whoa. Brainoid. Conduit. Oh, you got music? You got some jam game music in here? Sick. You can just play these on the site. That's awesome. It spawns the music player? Alright. Alright, I can hear this. Nobody else can hear this, but this is pretty slick. It's down here. Shenanigans, not sure how well it'd turn out for how you're doing stuff, but you came across a fairly simple way to do pixel art outlines in a post-processing step that looks quite good. It was somebody else who's doing the 3D to 2D, similar to how you are, but doing the entire scene. The outline post-processor step is once you are already in the pixel art stage. Oh, okay. Yeah, please share the video. That sounds cool. This is looking good, yeah. This is looking great. I'm excited. This might be my only jam this year, you know, that I hopefully succeed at. And by succeed, I mean, you know, finish something. It doesn't look like I'm going to be doing the October Ludum Dare. It's every single time they put it on the one weekend that I'm not available. I like all these themes. Translation's looking good. Color themes are looking good. Get my Obsidian. Oh, I'm already using Obsidian probably. Midnight Ablaze. Yeah, this is looking great. Some Solarized Dark. Look at all these choices. Apollo. This is fun. Hot Dog. This is great. Yeah, great work on this. Theme submissions open in 3 days. Ooh. Yeah, I'm a little nervous about that. All right, so I'm just gonna like start like messing around and seeing how I might want to set up this format. I'm not sure yet, because I'm not sure what information I want to provide. Like, these are walls. This is a floor. Do I want to provide the floor with the walls? I can. I can also reuse information. So if I wanted the top of the floor to be the same as the top of the wall, I could just do that. I probably wouldn't. You probably wouldn't want the floor to be the same as the top of a wall, but we could certainly set that up. So yeah, I'm not quite sure how I want to set up this information, but we definitely have ideas. You got some new emotes made by Rinks. Oh, that's looking nice. All the good emotes. Yeah, exactly. I need to do a jam this year just so I can get another emote, right? I get like one emote a jam. I need to ship something. Yeah. The ship it was definitely better than the mail time truck. But yeah, I think because I really want all of the, I want like a single autotiler pass for everything. I don't think I can guarantee that they all go through the same process. So I think I do need to just embed tile atlas information in the file and then read that in when I set up the tile atlas. So the tile atlas needs to be the great, not the tile atlas, excuse me. The tile set needs to be the great unifier. I need to be able to make assumptions about the tile set, but the tile atlases could be different. I do probably still need to provide some instruction beyond that, because like I need to consider things like the block is the same. The block looks the same from every direction, right? Not every block is going to look the same from every direction, but this one does. And that's very different than a shape like this, where this block looks different from every possible direction. So its tile atlas is going to be a lot more complicated because it needs to provide all the rotations. And it's like, how do I want to do that? Do I want to have that outlined like this, but just like copied over, like gloop? I do need to separate the individual faces too, though. And then the outlines need to be separated into many, many segments, unfortunately. And the other thing is you might actually want the texture to be different. So like right now, there is no difference in our texture depending on whether or not we're outlining it. But you can imagine a world where it is, right? Like where if you've got this, where's a good example to draw this? So like if you've got this middle tile with no outlines, this is going to look very different than the tile here with this outline on the edge. You'll probably want some different detail. So like maybe you would want have like little bits of information along the, or little bits along the edge that you don't have. Maybe there's like a gradient. I don't know. This is like just for illustrative purposes, but like maybe you do want some of this information like this, and then like the middle one is just like only this color. So this way, if you put this one here, you get that like gradient, right? So do I want to bother? Do I actually still want to do something like what we've got here where we have the underlying texture and the outline? So that if there's detail, if there's like a corresponding texture difference for a given outline difference, it's just already there. And that would certainly simplify the number of tile layers we need. It would increase the complexity of the atlas itself, but I think I would be okay with that. Posted to the Discord? Cool. I will check that out. Composited 3D pixel art. I'm interested in that. I still don't know if we could achieve what we want with that effect. I think that's like the way it looks, the video you posted, it looks like everything is flat. It's like shaded flat. And it's like right now our stuff is also shaded flat, but like, is it going to be that way forever? Probably not, right? Because like ships generally have little details, but like we are such a low resolution, like how much detail am I going to fit? Will it just look better? It honestly might look better if most of the time we just use flat texturing, solid texturing, and then we do maybe some post-processing like this where we apply noise or something like that. So people have like native resolution texturing. I don't know, maybe that's what we want to do. We could even have something where it's like the noise might be like more pronounced for given parts of it. I don't know. We'd have to like, you know, render the normal mapped version of it so it could like sample it, but that wouldn't be that expensive. We might actually do something like that for lighting. So that's the other thing I have to think about is the normal mapping of everything. Just got a lot of stuff up in the air right now, which is kind of how I framed it in the YouTube video description. I'm like, we're all over the place this week. We're kind of just gonna see what we can get traction on and just go for that. So I am kind of tempted to just, I really don't want to end up basically with this is the thing I don't want to do. And that's the thing I'm worried about. I'm worried about we're going to just end up exactly back here. And the parts of this that I really don't like are like all of this kind of stuff. The like half block outlining. That's why I kind of want the outline to be a separate layer. And that would be cool because right here, I was just talking about like, well, it would be simpler if we just have the right side texture and the right side outline in the same spot and we just render it once. But like, it would also be simpler if there is no edgewise special texturing like I drew. Then we could just have this drawn, the underlying texture drawn once, and have the outline drawn all over the place. Shader, full box. Yes, we talked about that. I'm tempted to do it. I don't want to. I thought about having something like this where we encode like, here's all the different outline segments as like these aren't bit flag values, but they're they're indexes in the palette that are associated with combinations of bit flag values. So we have a lot of overlap that we need to deal with. We have like overlap in the corners and overlap in the center. So I thought about setting it up like this, and then we just do a sample of like, I need this outline to be drawn. And it's like, okay, where are the pixels that we have that outline? Okay, now look at the underlying texture of like this thing and just like only draw that section. And like, I could totally do it that way. Problem is, I don't feel like that's much of a workflow win, because we're trying to think of this mostly in the context of our workflow. And I think I would honestly rather like lay this stuff out in a way that it's obvious than to do some kind of like trickery. Because it's very unintuitive what this means and how it will work. And it would involve sending a lot more information over to a shader. Like we would need to provide inputs to tell it like, okay, this tile is in this outline state, so you need to go look for these things. But yeah, how's it going, Foolbox? Screaming in with the one word, shader. Diginanigans, if you have a build step, you can keep your outlines on a separate layer and break your outlines up into segments. Then your build step can create the different permutations of outline you need. I'm tempted to do something like that, honestly. I'm tempted to take some kind of middle ground where the final result might still be this horrible monster. Didn't know Jewel make something like that? I will ask. Yeah, our final step could be this horrible monster, but it would be nice if like I didn't have to do all of this. It would be nice if all I had to do was, yeah, we could have one thing that's just the permutation of the outlines, so we could go like in whatever order and have those on different so we could have an outline. It could say something like bulk. We could either say just outline, or we could say like bulk outline if we wanted to say like full bulk outline, and then just have all of that there. Layer 1. This. It looks like No Jewel literally drew out every possible combination. Which is sick. The autotiler is good, but yeah, they're basically at the same result as me. So they make a wireframe, which is basically like our outline. So yeah, I think we can do something. I think we can make those as individual parts. Diginanigans would still need to manually create outlines, but significantly less. Yeah, I would enjoy just defining the outline segments once and defining the texture segments once, and then having something combine them all as necessary. Yeah. And that's not that bad. We can just have that happen inside the engine. And then have and then we can still build the tile set. And we can still do the thing we talked about of like encoding the information in the JSON file that's associated with our ASprite file. We can export the JSON along with it with our slices and stuff. Or we might not even need the slices. We could just describe the layers, depending. But yeah, I think we're going to do something like that. I feel like I'm in like a bit of a quantum superposition with it. And I feel like I just need it all to collapse into like one thing. But I think we're getting close. I'm just trying to keep in mind all of our requirements. Because that kind of is what messed me up earlier. Like we picked a way of doing it because we were able to define all of the Y faces with alt tiles, but we can't do that now. Because we actually have a tile. We have a tile that's unique for each face. The X face and the Y face are unique. We have the invalid block tile. But yeah, let's do something like that. What would be really slick so here's a question I have. I actually don't know how to pose the question. The section that's unnecessarily complicated and annoying are these half block sections where the outline just descends halfway. And that kind of implies that this is uninterrupted, but this is an edge. So there's an upper edge, but like a lower continuous thing to the right here. And so it's one of those cases where like, if you draw this out, if you like specify, okay, I actually did draw a texture that takes this into consideration. We go back to our horrible example of like, let's say there's some details along where the outline is, right? And it's like a gradient just for our argument. And then so it's uninterrupted here, so it just keeps going there. So like if you provide this texture, it would need to be able to understand that and process that. And that's where we could either use layers or slices to specify that. If you don't specify this, then it will just sample the like, I don't know, the blank base texture, which I have somewhere, this thing, the texture with no lines. It'll just sample this one and combine them here. Because we could also make it simpler in that we could introduce tile layers for outlines as being separate from tile layers for underlying textures. And that would simplify the combinatorics more, but it would double the number of tile map layers that we needed. And I don't really want to do it just for that, just to have the outlines be separate. Because like you're saying, we could still compose these final pieces from a simpler source. And I think that's what we want to do. I think we want to do something like that. So we could take something like this, take its different pieces. So I'm just going to start with this. Where's the halfway point? It's here. So we take this. Now we can take the sections of it. I don't really want to split. The other question is like, do I need to split the individual faces? Like, do I need to actually separate the X face from the Y face from the Z face? I'm tempted to say no. I'm tempted to say I don't actually need to split these because there is overlap, but the rules about who overwrites who is very strict. Like technically these lines overlap, which would correspond to these lines. But the Z face always takes precedence. The Z face will always overwrite the underlying X or Y face. Even if you have X faces that are stacking vertically, the upper segment will always overwrite the lower segment, so you don't actually need to worry about this stuff. And assuming that a block always draws completely or is obscured by another block, and so we don't ever have this issue of like, I'm drawing the X face, but there's nothing around it, then that's fine. Because I would also, that's kind of the thing I'm leaning towards, is I want you to be able to be like, here's a block. Here's its outline. Here's the underlying texture. And then like we go from there as clearly as possible. I think we need to do something like this where we separate out the dots are annoying. We have to think about the dots. Earlier we talked about dot versus no dot. I don't really want to go too far into it again, but the problem that we have is we actually need corner dots. Where is that called? All face mapping. So like we actually need to define little corner pieces. That I don't want to have to really do. Can I... Hold on. Can we do this with just slicing? Can we draw this once and then explain this with just slicing? So forget about this. Can I... How crazy can the slicing be? It's probably just rectilinear, right? So I can't like shift. No, I cannot. So it has to be regions. So I can't do like a... No, I can't. Okay. That's a bit of a problem. We could give it the same name. So we could say like, this is part of this. And then can I slice again underneath? Can slices overlap? It looks like the answer is no. Okay. Okay, so I can't quite use slices for that. Next, the cube looks great. You like the subtle shade differences to make the sides look better. Thanks. Yeah, right now we do have a shade difference for the top versus the sides, but eventually that's going to need to go away, and we're going to need to define steps up or down in shade based on lighting information, which is going to come from like some kind of normal mapping that we'll need to do. Because we're not going to want to hard code all the lighting. No, you're good. I don't even know what I'm talking about right now, Nix. I've got like too many different ideas buzzing around in here. What if we did something like this? I'm thinking of how I want to organize this. What if we did something like this? Oops, not trying to make slices. Leave me alone. Great, I made a slice. Now I can't get rid of it. Help, I've sliced my sprite and I can't get up. Shenanigans, you don't think you need to draw the outlines on the normal maps unless you're specifically looking to smooth the corners? They weren't. Yeah, I think you're right. I was thinking about using it more in the context of this other thing we were trying. I was thinking about how we could encode outline information in the quote unquote normal map or a map. I was kind of mixing my purposes there. I was like, could we include edge information there? Should we include edge information there? Should the edges be smoothed? Yeah, I'm not sure. I think you're probably right. I mean, in the case of a cube, each face on the normal map would be a flat color right to the edge. The problem is we're going to start to have rounded surfaces soon. That's gonna be rough. Because right now I've made triangular flat surfaces, but eventually I'm gonna want like curved versions of this. That's gonna be a pain in the butt. But how's everyone doing? You're working on tutorialization. Nice. That's a good thing to work on. All right, so do I need to split these faces up, or can I draw them as individual cubes? I do eventually need to split them up, but I can, our compose step, as the shenanigans called it, could do that for me, which would be nice. In which case I just need to define how these shapes get broken up. At first I thought I could predefine where like the height points. Like I thought I could at some point be like a half block is just, you just go up 13 pixels and then you just start to like cut across. But that's not actually true when you talk about something like this. Like the halfway up point for this is not the same. Maybe it is actually. No, it's not. It's not. I don't think it is. Let me make sure I'm not talking crazy here. Yeah, no, we would struggle with this. Because this would need to go from here across like this. That's what the cutaway would look like. And there's no way to guess that, I don't think, unless it's consistent. Is this still just 13 pixels up from here? No, it's not. Yeah, that's the problem. Is this even right? Nix, you're playing RimWorld. You're thinking about faction name for the past 30 minutes. Oh my god. You just hit random until you come up with something that's okay. Shenanigans. If you want smooth shadows, use a gradient in the normal map. If you want harsh shadow, you can still do solid color normal maps and just change the shade where you want the shadow to increase, decrease. Yeah, we probably, when there's, I don't know. I actually don't know. We might bake some interior lighting into the sprites. We may not. That is definitely something we need to think about sooner than later. I should be trying to set up this case because this case is complicated and I think is going to affect our opinion. The like complicated case of like, there's 4 of these, and it looks different from each camera rotation. But I kind of want to just set up the simple case. I have to decide how I want to handle the corner dots. Because these corner dots are like, I don't want to waste a hole. Maybe I can describe where the corners are, if there are corners. Maybe I should work on this case. Because this case is interesting because there are corners. Maybe I can just define the corners more easily. Maybe that's a good use of a slice. You just slice the corners instead of having to make a whole frame for them. No, they should be, well, they eventually need to be their own frame. The question is, do I need to draw them? So what we could do is we could include some of the mapping information here. So we could do this thing. We could say, maybe I do still want to include some of this information, this thing I was talking about. Maybe I do want to do this. I really don't like this, but just having this here could at least feed information to our it could feed information to our compose step that actually builds out the process, or that builds out the actual texture map. Maybe we do use something like this. I kind of like that. Because the thing I don't want to do is I just don't want to draw that many of them. I don't want to draw every iteration of the corners. But I also don't want to do this. I don't want to use the actual bit flag color combination. Well, we can't do bit flags. This is, well, we can. Because the corners are represented as the overlap of these two flags, this top line flag and this left line flag. Where they combine, that's where a corner is. So we have it implicitly included. So this I don't want to draw because this is like impossible to understand. So I think the shitty thing that's easier to do is for each of these bit flag combinations that are usable, that are reasonable and useful, you assign a color to them. Another reason I don't want to do it this way is I don't want to have to use multiple palettes in a piece like this. I guess it doesn't matter. I'm switching between low sat and high sat palettes all the time anyway. That's two different palettes. But yeah, maybe we do something. Maybe we do actually use something like this. We just don't use it in a shader. We use it for the build step for when we're building the texture atlases. Yeah, I can get behind this, I think. I can hang with this. So that means we could include something like this. Maybe we do something like this. Let me make some room. And then we can include additional things like, here's the 3D block. Here is the way this texture maps to the different sides. The only trick is we do need to separate the outline from the underlying texture if there is one. If there isn't, we could just disinclude it. In which case, this looks a lot simpler. It would actually just look like... So for like our hover thing, it would just look like this. It would just look like... Oops. So if we don't have any edges, it would just be like this, and then... have like a much simpler version. You just take the outlines out so that it's just the much simpler underlying one. I don't want to do that right now because that's annoying, but. And then we could also have our normal map here. So we could do this. Just do like normal mapping actually is a little complicated here because while this faces the top. Oh, no, that's fine. Never mind. Ignore me. Part of a mistake that I made early on that I've been propagating ever since, which I think I finally need to stop, is that when we've been drawing these wall tiles here, we're drawing them too tall. So like here, we're overdrawing this. This thing is 25 pixels tall here at one side. But the problem is when I actually place it anywhere, it overlaps with whatever's above it. So we shouldn't be drawing this at all. We should be chopping the top of this off. I just didn't do that because I don't like that. But that simplifies a lot. And then if we're layering them on top of each other, no problemo. Just do that. And like this is the same. Doing this is the same. It's just doing this. So I'm gonna put the normal map next to this because I feel like it's getting confusing when I have this thing next to this thing and I don't explain what it is. The only thing I'm not sure about is the half tile stuff. Like, do I need the half tile to be a separate thing? Or can I include the half tile outline information in this? So we already kind of know where it is based on the midpoints for these. And so I could include more blue color stuff in here. And then we would just need to specify what the interior of this is. So for some things, the interior is whatever. But it's still something that we would need to specify in a lot of cases. I don't need this here, do I? I have the green here. I actually shouldn't do that because this doesn't matter at all. I'm going to fix this over here. Not here. I did this wrong. This part that's magenta and cyan shouldn't be because that's implying that the X and the Y face actually have some impact on the Z face here, and that's not true. It's just not true. Actually, it's a little true. It's a little true. Because while the outline wouldn't have any effect, it'll just use the outline from here. It does need... It might pick a different texture. The thing I was talking about earlier. Where, like, you might change the texture because you're at an edge versus being in the middle. Even if the outline is coming from somewhere else. You still might want to swap that texture out, even though you're not the one determining whether there's an outline. But that's fine. So how many... Wait, how many is this? Then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, no, 7. Oh, can I actually use bit flags for this? I still don't want to, but I could. I maybe could. I'm going to call this simpler. Or maybe reduced. I don't know. We're going to draw this out again. So this is RGB 16. I think I just need RGB 8. Again, I would like to just use the actual bit flag things here, but I can't see this. I can't see this to draw. So I think we need an intermediate step, or we just need to map the bit flag combinations to other color channels values. So like instead of 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32 or whatever, we could just do, you know, 32, 64, which again, you can't combine that. Oh, so in that case, it would be 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's not much better. Maybe this is fine then. Finish this so this doesn't look totally insane. Appreciate everyone hanging out with me here while I just kind of ramble about nothing. Oh, that burns. We're doing this normal map in tile space, which is why it's just RGB right now instead of like a mix of them. Because in tile space, like this face is dead along the x-axis. So it would look like this. And we'd probably do the lighting in tile space. So this would be like our horrible normal map. This is kind of like my idea for like the outline map. I still want to find a better way to do this that doesn't make me want to cry when I like have to figure out, or if I had to explain to someone how this worked. Maybe it is better to do the layer method, because that was the other way that was recommended to me, was like instead of encoding it on a single layer like this, just have one layer for this part of the outline, one layer for this part of the outline, one layer for this part of the outline. And then just do it like that. And I think that's a good idea. Because I think while this is efficient, it's also unintelligible. So I think I want to go back to something like layers here. So like here you could describe the outline like this, like here's one section, here's the next section, here's another section, and another section, and another section, and another section. I would just need to come up with a consistent naming convention for them, which I don't have one per se at the moment. West top left, west top right, etc. Yeah, the way I wanted to describe it in terms of in local terms. So this would be like, this section down here would be like X face, lower right, or I don't know, it'd be like maybe it'd be x0, so maybe it'd be x equals 0, and then minus y. Oh no, it needs to be minus x, because it's on the right side. I'm also putting this into tile space, so I was just having like x-axis, right, left, y-axis, z-axis, you know. I was gonna put it in tile space, so I was gonna have like oh no, yeah, so I can do this with a single vector. So we could say x is 0, negative y, positive z. And then so this would be x is 0, y is 0. Although then I wouldn't know which one I was talking about. Matthew Sparks, long time. We doing artwork? It's going good. It's going good. We can show it off a little bit. That'd probably be good. How are you doing? We're working on something that's not exactly art. We're working on like the tile atlas format that we want to use, which needs to be a little more complicated than it has been. But yeah, the autotiler's looking good. If you haven't been here in a while, you should see some cool stuff. So like here's a space. We've got a bunch of overlay stuff going now. So you've got like cursor overlay stuff and like selection overlay stuff. And so we can make our little space. Got a little tinting on like what you're actively controlling, so it's a little easier to see. The autotiler is good. It's putting the outlines where they need to go. Cutaway system is doing well. It's handling these like layered spaces pretty well here. We can select this. Oh yeah, we need just the lower part there. We added some invalid door blocks, because before if you put a door somewhere that it couldn't go, it would just turn invisible, which was not great. But now if you make an invalid block, it turns into this magenta thing. But it's just substituting individual blocks of a door. It's not auto tiling, and so we're kind of working towards that. And that's causing us to rethink a lot of stuff, which is unfortunate. The half block cutaways are looking pretty good. Significant amount of changes. Nice. Yeah, then it was probably a little more than a couple weeks ago you last tuned in. But yeah, the auto tiler is pretty good. We're thinking about changing the way that tile atlases are set up to accommodate some more complicated things. We're thinking about that invalid block, which the invalid block is tough because so far we've just been doing flat shading stuff. So the Y face has just been a mirror image of the X face, but this one, they're unique. You'll notice that the checkerboard pattern has to alternate to maintain cohesiveness with the top. So that means that the Y face is actually a unique thing and not just the flipped version of this. So we need to change our tile atlas to accomplish that, or to accommodate that. Since we're doing that anyway, we're trying to think about future-proofing it so that we can handle things like this, like this sloped block, which has, which appears differently depending on which way you've oriented it. Yeah, I need to mock this one up too, because this is the case that's really gonna matter. But we're starting with the invalid block, and we're thinking about different ways of like mapping it. We're doing some crazy weird stuff here, where we're encoding data about it in weird ways, but I don't love this. So yeah, we might just simplify it to say to use multiple layers on a single thing. I kind of like that. So we would make like, I already have this going here, don't I? So let's fix this. So we could make a new layer at the bottom here. We could call it like the texture. I should probably call it like albedo or something, because I feel like that's what everyone always calls that stuff. But yeah, how are you doing? It's been a minute. So we could take our take this. Oh, we probably need to do it like this. We probably need to include each of the things that actually belong to it, but let's just handle the top part first. So we can put this in the texture part. Then the interior, then we can have, so we can take this one and grab, where was I working on this? Here it is. Grab this, put it on a different layer. Yeah, I think having it be layer based is probably good. So yeah, here's the interior, here's the whole texture, and then what we can do is we can have just the outlines part here. So we can replace this. Let's just erase this. Just the outlines part. And then we can start specifying the outline, which segments of outlines there are. So this would be like one segment here, 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 one segment here. Should I be trying to specify multiple segments at the same time? Will that work, or would that cause problems? Like, could I do this segment at the same time I do this segment? And then do this segment and this segment? And could I also combine that with So this is the lower X, whatever. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't. But yeah, if we don't include an outline layer, then that outline layer just isn't a thing, I guess. I should probably include the half as well, right? The half information. I think I've talked about that stuff before. You can see people going nuts building their own stuff. Yeah, it's getting complicated. Going way back, were you planning... Okay, there's some new messages. Must have been over a couple weeks ago. Yeah, you're right. Time and space stopped making any sense to you about 5 years ago, and it's not improved since. That's funny. Yeah. That does happen where you're like... I'll think about somebody's new album, and then I'll be like, oh, their new album that they dropped in 2019. Yeah, something broke. Going back, were you planning on releasing the editor stuff publicly with the game? The editor will be available in the game. So yeah, part of the intention is that you will be able to build your own ships to some extent, or like plug in your own alternative texture sets, which is why I'm trying to define these in a way that somebody can understand them. If they like look at one of my texture sets, you need to be able to understand how you would make your own. Yeah, Nix. 2019 is only like a year ago. Exactly. Forever a year ago. Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely the intent, which is why we're being very pained. We're taking great pains to do this in a way that's understandable at a glance. Because I could have just, you know, for my own sake, gone all in and like just been like, this is how we're going to map the outlines. Using this crazy, janky, whatever this is. I need to get rid of this. I can't look at this. This hurts my eyes. I can't. I might actually paint the normal maps not in tile space. I'm thinking about it now, but I think the default light source is actually going to be straight from the camera. Like, I think the light sources are going to come at vertices. Come from vertices and point to other vertices. So I probably need to remake the... normal maps are probably going to look like CMY or whatever. Because they're probably going to be midpoints between the RGB. Yeah. I don't mean CMY as in like the color spectrum. I mean like literally like cyan, magenta, and or whatever. What is it supposed to be? No, it's orange, cyan, and whatever the third one is. I guess it's magenta. It's magenta, cyan, and like whatever you get when you combine green with red. Yellow, right? I know color theory, so I guess it is. 2019 will always be a year ago. Yeah, exactly. Just like the 80s will always be 20 years ago. Yeah. Yep. Yep. That is the way. Matthew, you also think about albums the same way? A new album to you is just the last one a band released? Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yeah. We're getting old. I was joking at the beginning of the stream that I like injured myself this morning dumping out my yesterday's coffee grinds, which are not heavy. It's just 1 cup of coffee grinds, but I made this motion with my other side. I'm not going to recreate the motion, but I just dumped it out. And when I just dumped it out, I like pulled a muscle in like my rib cage and it hurts a lot. It's sad. It's sad that you can just injure yourself doing something like that at this point. I say you, I mean me. If I was in better shape, it probably wouldn't happen, but you know, c'est la vie. All right. I think I have an understanding about how I'm going to build this layer thing out. I think I want to do it more offline. Let's try to set one up for... Do I grind my own coffee beans? Oh, of course. But, you know, not by hand. I have, like, a coffee grinder. But yeah, Silas, you gotta grind your beans fresh. That's the one... That's really the only... I'm gonna hesitate. I'm gonna regret saying it this way. But that is, like... Maybe not the only. That is the chief coffee crime that I think one can... You know, besides microwaving your coffee, but, like... If you buy pre-ground coffee, ground coffee loses its aromatics. The half-life of coffee's aromatics is like 24 hours. So 24 hours after you've ground your beans, half the aromatics are gone. And then, you know, it probably doesn't exactly work like a half-life, but it's close. I'm going to save this because I think... Yeah, I think doing this is just layers. This is good. So you have 6 layers you're concerned about. You have 8 outlines you're concerned about. You have 6 outlines you're concerned about. Okay. I think we can make this work. My only question is whether I embed the half block outline stuff in here. I think I do. I don't think I want to have to save the half block as a separate texture. So we can say something like full block. Say like full block interior. You used to drink instant or percolated coffee? I mean, that's fine, because that's, you know what you're going to get, right? If you drink instant coffee. We're talking about, like, whole bean. Sorry, I'm a bit of a coffee snob. I mean, who isn't? I mean, clearly some people aren't, but you know what I mean. Yeah, so I got to come up with an outline naming convention that I don't hate. I don't need this. So this is meaningless. Although, yeah, no, this is meaningless. So this layer I can get rid of. So there's just 5 layers. There's like the lower half, the upper half. What if I just do full? Oh no, because I need to know upper half and lower half. But I could encode it differently. No, yeah, doing it by half is smart. Okay. Silas, you were thinking about creating a kind of lore manual for your game with the story of the universe as a guideline for development and story building to keep it coherent outwards while keeping the manual only for internal development use. Do you have something like that? Or do you have any kind of lore even in your head or grounding the universe your game is? I have lore. I haven't spent a lot of time on it. But yeah, that's a lot of what my Obsidian originally was before I discovered canvases. Once I discovered canvases, I use this for all sorts of stuff. So I've got like my roadmap, which actually is more like this. But yeah, I've got my, you know, I love my canvases, which I've been using for systems diagrams and stuff, and like mood boards and stuff. But yeah, I also have stuff in here, so like I like it. I like it for this because you can reference other things in it. So I can say like game. I haven't worked on any of this part of it, but I can be like, all right, so here's how I'm going to structure the game lore. It's like, okay, here's where I'm going to put like the maybe I'll write named characters. Here's where I'll put the named characters. And like Obsidian's really great for having everything be linked. So I haven't actually done any of this because I don't actually like this, but I'll do it more. Like where's a good example? So 5-year mission. Time jump. I wrote one thing for like the story. I don't remember where. One last mission. So like I wrote a thing about how I would want to do the ending. Like I'd want the game to be like the TV season of like Star Trek, and then the ending would be like one of the Star Trek movies, like Wrath of Khan or something. And I've started writing that stuff out. But yeah, I am pretty lore light at this time. I have a lot more headcanon than I have like written down. But that's because to me, my inspiration lore wise is like it's both concrete, but it's also going to need to be heavily interpreted through the lens of the gameplay. So I'm not quite the kind of person who like waits to write the lore or where the lore just entirely springs out of the gameplay, but I'm kind of in between. I'm still kind of waiting for the game to tell me what it is, which I won't exactly know until, you know, I've got something playable. Because you can make all the plans in the world, but once you like until you've got the gameplay loop in place, your best ideas about what the game is are just that. They're just like a hunch. They're just like a possibility. And you might get the game playable, and the truth is that, you know, what the game is not exactly what you thought it would be. And that could impact everything, that from the design to the implementation to the lore. So I'm a little cautious about putting too much time into it right now. But yeah, we are very like Homeric. Like we're gonna go pretty hard into like a sci-fi epic kind of weird hybrid. I've talked about stuff about how I feel the gods will like play a role in this universe, and how it'll be very much modeled around like kind of the logical conclusion of like AI development. There's some stuff, but it is mostly headcanon right now. Diginanigans, you're assuming I don't really need to consider collision data, just either a block is there or not, and whether you can walk on that block. I don't really. The only blocks, quote unquote blocks, that are going to have collision data are blocks that are actually nodes. So like doors. Doors have a proxy that gets spawned into the tile map while it's building. But as soon as we go from edit mode to play mode, all of the door proxies are going to be swapped out with actual door nodes so that they can animate and do stuff like that. And those will have collision information. Because those, you might not be able to figure out what you're clicking on. Like, to be able to click onto a crew member. Although maybe I actually won't include collision layers for those. That was my initial idea, but I'm thinking about our raycast input system. And our raycast input system could actually probably solve a lot of those issues. At least with doors. Because, like, you'd want to be able to click on a door whether it's open or closed. I don't know, whatever. Yeah, collision data is not terribly important for us, Diginanigans. Because the Pathfinder will just won't let you path somewhere if you can't get there. There's no direct control, I guess, is the thing. It's all click a character and then click where you want that character to go, and the character will try to do it. So I feel like in that case, when there's no direct control, you really don't need collision information provided. Diginanigans, you're constantly tossing in all your design stuff into Obsidian. You got a quite detailed GDD that you're constantly iterating on. Screenshots in the Discord. Nice. Check that out, Silas. There's probably good stuff there too. Just as far as like how you might format that stuff. I would call myself GDD skeptical. It would help me organize my work a little better, I think, if I at least planned out stuff a little more, but it just doesn't fit my style as well. Like my style is very loose and iterative. And I feel like the more concretely the way I lay out I want something to work, the more inflexible that system inherently becomes, and it makes adjusting it later really hard. I think of GDDs as the whole planning up. What's the phrase? It's like a plan is useless, but planning is essential. It's like the time you spend planning and thinking about lore and like designing this stuff is crucial. But like whatever you end up at until it's like in the game is just an approximation. Not to denigrate anyone's GDD or anything. It's just, I just think of it a little differently. I think I've actually become less about that stuff over time. I think before I was maybe more preoccupied with making like big plans and writing it out. And then at a certain point I realized that I was like my ability to actually implement the thing was really the most determining factor. So until I've got something implemented, it's like I tend not to like presume that it's how the thing is going to turn out. I don't know. If it isn't clear, I'm like running out of stuff to work on today in my mind. Tonight, I've got another game dev co-op or co-working session for a few hours. I'm going to iterate through. I'm going to make a tile map layer. I'm going to make an attempt at doing I'm going to try to make a couple different of these layered approaches to this with like the information and stuff. And I'm going to do one for this, for the invalid block. And I'm going to try to do one for this one, for the sloped block that has like 4 different angles, to see if that violates any assumptions that I'm making while doing this one. And if I can get this one and this one well represented in this format, tomorrow we'll start working on changing the way our tile set atlas works, and maybe start writing a little tool script that like sets it up for us, which is going to be annoying because it's probably going to be in GD script, because I'll need to like load a file up where I'm like, here's the file that we're going to be using, and it's going to like be like, oh, I see a file here. I'm like watching this folder for new files and I see one. Let's make a tile atlas for this, or a tile set, or whatever. So we'll work on our workflow, which kind of is silly because it means we've actually just hijacked my task list here, and the tile set atlas builder, this is just being moved to in progress because we've just started working on this. That was not the plan, but we're doing it because we kind of need it to be able to tile invalid blocks and to do the other stuff we want to do. So oopsies. And it's a precursor to being able to expand the block palette anyway, but we're starting to get a few too many things. We're getting a few too many irons in the fire right now, but they all kind of interdepend on each other, so it's kind of unavoidable. So, c'est la vie. I still need to figure out how I'm gonna slot lo-fi flyby, which I might put a hyphen in. Lo-fi flyby. Yeah, because then it's 5 characters. Silas, you had to look up GDD. It seems a bit too much upfront planning for you. You were thinking more as a background story for what the universe is about. Probably your use of the word manual was a bit too heavy-handed. Oh, yeah, maybe. But no, I think that's the sort of thing. The headcanon is key. And a lot of the old sci-fi that I've been watching it seems to have a lot of headcanon that they never explain, and that's my favorite. I love when a movie introduces some crazy piece of world information and then just never talks about it ever again. They just hint about all of these things happening in the background. But yeah, we need to talk about lo-fi flyby and what we're gonna do and when it's gonna happen. Is it going to be like here? It's probably going to be, or is it going to be here? I think it's actually going to be before the alpha MVP launch, so maybe we do leave it here. We'll talk about this soon. We talked about it a little bit, but we'll talk about it more later. Diginanigans, you call it a GDD, but it's your iterative idea document. It is constantly revised as needed and did not put any intention to planning things up front in it. See, that's the thing I couldn't do, because you're basically talking about code comments now. And like, if you have a thought in the middle of the day, it takes you 2 minutes to toss it into oblivion. Like, you're not exactly talking about code comments, but like, that just feels exhausting to me to like keep my idea document, unless it's just that it's an idea document and has like no relation to what you're actually working on. But like, if you need to, like, let's say you change the implementation something, if you then need to go back and update that in the idea document, that's when I just can't be bothered anymore. Which, you know, big surprise, I don't write comments in my code. I can't be bothered. Silas, that's what you mean? You think that's very immersive when you get the feeling that there's a coherent universe, but that you're not explicitly told about it. It's just there. Yeah. A great example of how not to do that is like Star Wars or even Star Trek. Because especially even the fandom, there's like, anytime there's like a hint of something cool and mysterious, all of a sudden there's a novel about it, or like a million pages of lore, and like, it gets over-explained. I think sci-fi is very often over-explained. The code is the documentation. That's right. That's right, Matthew. Yeah, I would love a little bit more mystery, but you end up not getting that because of how all of our media nowadays is all based on reboots and sequels and remakes. And so nothing's new. So you're churning through the same material and looking for something that was maybe underutilized or underexplained, is like, you know, Andor was such a huge, such a huge success. Are you suggesting we didn't need midichlorians? Matthew's got it. Notice how no one has said anything about midichlorians since 1999. That was backpedaled very quickly. Yeah, that's a great example, because it just ruins so much. Yeah. Kind of like how a sequel to Blade Runner ruins the ambiguity of the ending of Blade Runner. There's a lot of cases like that. Not a word. Yeah, exactly. No one has uttered a peep about midichlorians since in 25 years. That was such a mistake. But yeah, Andor was such a success. I wouldn't be surprised if we get a show about Manny Bothans, right? Manny Bothans, who died, getting us the plans to like the reconstructed Death Star. That was it, right? That couldn't have possibly been from. Yeah, that was from Return of the Jedi, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, Manny Bothans. We're going to get a biopic probably about him. All right, Diginanigans. No, you definitely do not make sure that the idea document's up to date. It's just you're creating your own content authoring tools, though, and you're moving from Obsidian strictly to that when it's done. Oh, cool. Anything created in the tool will be consumed directly by the game. Ooh, that sounds fancy. But you want to put a big focus on how things relate and intertwine and all the lore and story stuff, too. Slightly more complex with the semi-procedural stories you're doing. It turns out George Lucas wasn't an endless font of good ideas. Yeah, it's wild. It's crazy. It's almost like the first thing you make before you get huge and successful to the point where you don't have to care anymore. It's almost like that first thing is the best thing you do. And then everything after that, becomes questionable. There was a video of him when production on Phantom started, and it was something, he said something like, I'm going to go into my trailer and I'm going to finish writing the script now. And he just left like they'd just started shooting the film He was like, I'm still working on it. I haven't finished writing the script yet. And it's like, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, this isn't like a dump on Star Wars stream. We criticize it because we are passionate about it, right? If we weren't passionate about it, we wouldn't spend 2 words on it. Yeah, Silas. Yeah, it's not good. Matthew, you never saw the new Blade Runner. You actually had several people tell you they preferred it to the original. I believe that, but yeah, I can't watch it because it violates my headcanon about Blade Runner. I'll probably watch it eventually and then just tell myself that it's fan fiction. LS, you think 2049 has good ideas? You don't think it lives up or improves on it? Yeah. Yeah, like, I don't think Ridley Scott's making better movies than, he did back in the day. But yeah, going back to the original point, the headcanon is important, but I think mystery is the secret sauce. Like, having like, let's say there's whatever creative medium or thing that you make, there's like this mountain of content, right? It's more of an iceberg, or it should be more of an iceberg, where there's like this little bit at the top, and that's the thing that gets consumed. And then there's this implication of all of this whole universe that backs it up, but it's all beneath the surface, right? It's like the below the waterline part of the iceberg. You can't just lift that whole thing up. Like, there has to be stuff under there. And it also has to stay under there. That's my opinion. I'll get off my soapbox and probably wrap up the stream here. I got a meeting soon. And yeah, sorry we weren't very productive today. This was very much an ideas day. We're like, I think I have a good direction for what I need to work on tonight. And I will come back tomorrow, and we will have some new Tile Atlas formats to try out. We'll try to figure out what our workflow is for doing the quote unquote build step, where we like convert that into something that the game can actually use. And we'll try to figure out how to get from these different starting formats to get to a final final tile set that actually is consistent enough that we can still have our like one pass auto tiler that figures it out. Yeah, this was fun. Warp. Yeah, hey no Jewel. Maximum warp. This has been fun. This is a good start to the week. I appreciate everyone hanging out here. It feels like we're just, picking up steam. I wish I had the free time to do like 4-hour streams, 6-hour streams. But alas, back to the day job I must go here. Yeah, hopefully we'll be doing this again tomorrow. We do it Tuesday through Saturday for anyone who's new around this time. T-minus 3 hours or so for our normal start time. Maximum chow. Thank you. Thank you, Diginanigans. But yeah, it's been really nice seeing everyone. Seeing people also on the YouTube side, Twitch side. Yeah. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Come back tomorrow. Just stop sleeping. That's it. You're right. You're right. I should do that, Matthew. I'd have more time to stream. But yeah. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Bye.